know that moment when you recognize something you were never supposed to see? I had one of those on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday night. A mangled front bumper, a cracked headlight, the dent along the passenger side. It wasn't just any wreck on the news, it was my brother's car. A hit and run in our quiet Wisconsin town. No one dead, thank God, but the damage was severe. And the worst part? I knew exactly who was behind the wheel. I'm Amanda, a high school English teacher in the kind of rural town where everybody knows everybody, and everybody keeps secrets. What would you do if you found out your own brother fled the scene of a crime? Do you stay silent for the sake of family, or do you do what's right, even if it costs you everything? Stick around, because this is the story of how I lost nearly everything to tell the truth, and why I'd do it all over again. I never thought I'd be the one staring down a screen, heart racing, as the rest of the world scrolled casually past a headline that shattered my world. I was curled on the couch, half watching reruns while lesson plans blinked at me from my laptop screen. The TV was muted, but my phone lit up with a news alert. Something about a hit and run just outside of Hayward. That's just a half hour north of here. Normally, I'd ignore it, but the thumbnail image made my stomach clench. A blurry still from a nighttime security cam. A car, black, compact, the front crushed like paper. There was something about the dent near the headlight. The exact pattern I'd seen every holiday when I pulled into the driveway at our parents' house. A stubborn dent Michael never fixed. No injuries, the article said. Just property damage. A stone fence toppled, and someone's flower bed left in ruins. Likely a young driver, the police speculated. Possibly under the influence. I stared longer than I should have. No name, no plates visible, just the wreckage. The shattered glass glittering in the security footage. It couldn't be. Except, deep down, I already knew it was. Michael always had a way of finding trouble. We grew up in a town where everyone smiled at you in church, even if they were whispering behind your back. He never quite outgrew the teenage recklessness that made him a legend in high school. Our parents called him misunderstood. I called him dangerous in denial. I stood, pacing the small living room of my duplex, the same room I graded essays in, the same room where I taught remote classes during lockdown, preaching responsibility and ethics. What kind of teacher could I be if I ignored this? I opened the article again. Still no mention of a suspect. Still no injuries. I should have been relieved. But I couldn't shake the image of that car. I texted my mom. Just something casual. All okay over there tonight? No response. I waited 15 minutes before grabbing my coat. I needed to see the garage. His car, just to rule it out. My little sedan crunched across the icy roads toward my childhood home. Their house looked exactly the same. Porch light glowing, wreaths still hanging from Christmas. I knocked on the side door, already knowing what I'd find. The garage was dark, but not locked. I eased it open, phone light held high. The car was there, and so was the damage. Shattered headlight, crumpled hood, the faint trace of what might have been garden soil along the tire well. I didn't need a confession. My knees felt weak. The garage smelled like motor oil and betrayal. Behind me, the door creaked open. Amanda? My father's voice. Calm, curious, as though I'd dropped by for a cup of coffee. I turned but couldn't find the words. He followed my gaze to the car and didn't flinch. We're handling it, he said flatly. It was an accident. My voice when it came was hoarse. That's someone's home he wrecked. No one was hurt, he replied. I backed away, out of the garage, out of that heavy air. My heart was screaming something I hadn't fully admitted until that moment. If no one else would hold him accountable, I might have to. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the garden, about the twisted fencing and the way the tire marks must have torn through someone's sanctuary. I imagined an older woman waking to find chaos where her roses used to grow, and I imagined Michael, slipping back into bed afterward, pretending the night never happened. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I didn't call first. I drove straight to our parents' house again, not to tiptoe around the truth this time, but to hear it from his own lips. The living room smelled like percolated coffee and lemon wood polish. Everything, as I remembered, a faded throw blanket over the couch, family portraits along the wall, Michael in his football jersey, me in my graduation gown, both smiling like the world was wide open and uncomplicated. Mom was at the kitchen table, robe wrapped tight, hands wrapped around a steaming mug. "You're up early," she said softly. "Where is he?" I asked. She didn't need clarification, a pause. "In the basement," she murmured, not meeting my eyes. I descended the narrow stairs slowly, one hand skimming the wooden banister. The door at the bottom was ajar. Michael sat on the futon, staring blankly at the television. A basketball game from last night, unwatched, forgotten. He didn't flinch when I walked in. "You want to tell me the truth?" I asked, my voice low but shaking. He sighed, dragging a hand across his face. "You saw the footage," he muttered. "So I guess you already know." "I didn't sit. I couldn't. It was you." He nodded, barely. "I'd had a few beers. I didn't see the curve. Next thing I knew, I was in someone's yard." He looked up at me, eyes bloodshot but dry. I panicked. I just left. I couldn't believe how casually he said it. Like leaving a scene of destruction was just one of many bad decisions. Like it was survivable, forgivable. "You left," I repeated, my voice cracking. "I didn't hit anyone. And I was going to tell someone," he insisted. "Just not yet." "How long were you going to wait? Until the car healed itself?" He stood then, taller than me, his face suddenly hard. "You think I'm proud of this? You think I don't hate myself already? You don't hate yourself enough," I snapped. "You came home and went to sleep." Footsteps on the stairs. Then Dad appeared, flanked by Mom, both dressed now, as if they'd coordinated this moment. "Let's sit," Dad said gently, gesturing toward the worn armchair. "I'm not here to sit," I told him. "I'm here because Michael committed a crime." My mother stepped between us, voice trembling. "Mandy, please. We know it was wrong, but you don't have to make it worse." "Worse for who?" I asked. "Our family," Dad said firmly. "The press, the gossip, it'll follow all of us. Your job, your name. It'll drag you down too." I stared at them, the three of them. Not a hint of outrage at what Michael had done. Only fear of what people might say. "So what do you expect?" I asked, voice rising. "That I just stay quiet? Pretend it never happened?" "It was a mistake," Mom whispered. "He needs support, not punishment." That word, support, landed like a punch. I'd been supporting this family since I could speak in full sentences. The one who followed rules, brought home awards, stayed in town to teach other people's kids while Michael drifted. Now I was being asked to carry his burden too. I stepped back, heart pounding so loud it made my vision pulse. Dad's voice turned cold. "No one's asking you to lie. Just let this go. For the sake of the family." It wasn't a request. It was an order dressed in paternal calm. I didn't answer. I just looked at Michael, who avoided my gaze, and then at my parents, standing like sentinels at the threshold of guilt. Maybe they expected me to nod, to protect the illusion, to carry on like I always had. But inside, something shifted. I turned and walked up the stairs, not because I was done, but because I wasn't. Not even close. I've always believed that truth has a pulse. You can ignore it, bury it, even drown it in fear, but it keeps beating. Quiet, steady, waiting. That pulse haunted me for days. I went back to work, teaching To Kill a Mockingbird to 10th graders who didn't know their teacher had a secret curling in her gut like smoke. I smiled through meetings, graded essays, gave feedback on thesis statements, while watching my brother's face in the back of my mind. Watching him walk away from wreckage like it was nothing. The video kept resurfacing online. Same blurry footage, same calls for accountability. The town wanted a name, and I had one. But my family had made it clear, silence was the price of loyalty. So I found another way. One night I waited until the streets were dark, and my neighbor's porch lights blinked off one by one. I sat in my car, engine off, windows up, and pulled out the old dashcam I'd used years ago when I was still commuting to grad school in Eau Claire. I'd nearly forgotten it was still in the closet. My breath caught as I plugged it in and skimmed the files. I'd lent the camera to Michael back in December when he claimed his car was getting keyed in town. Apparently he never gave it back. Apparently he never wiped it either. And there it was, a recording from that night, time-stamped, sharp, damning. Michael's voice muttering to himself. The blare of the radio. Then a sharp turn, a thud, silence, cursing. The camera caught more than just the impact. It caught him reversing, leaving, driving off. I copied the file onto a flash drive and uploaded it to a secure site the next morning, an anonymous police tip line the town had promoted during its latest Community Justice Week. No names, no context, just evidence. I didn't do it to punish him. I did it because I couldn't unsee that flower bed in ruins, because that widow deserved better than silence. Because somewhere in that classroom, one of my students might learn that doing the right thing means standing alone sometimes. I turned it in and tried to breathe again. It worked, for a moment, a brief moment, until the call came 3 days later. A blocked number. Amanda Layton? A voice asked. Male. Even. Polite. This is Officer Bergstrom with the Sawyer County Sheriff's Department. My mouth went dry. I'm not calling in an official capacity, he said quickly. I just wanted to let you know. We received footage you uploaded. It's being processed as part of the investigation. I started, then stopped. I hadn't given my name. We wouldn't normally know who submitted it, he continued. But your neighbor's doorbell cam recorded you walking from your car to your house the same night the dashcam footage was uploaded. It's not public, but someone matched the timing. Someone. I knew who. Our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Greeley, was practically family, retired librarian, lived alone with her cat, and her obsession with home surveillance. She'd once shown me her setup in case the raccoons came back, and now it had caught me. The officer paused. I'm not saying you're in trouble, I just thought you'd want to know. It's already circulating among the town council. I can't control who else finds out. My hands trembled as I ended the call. The truth was out. Not just Michael's, but mine, too. I stared at the wall of my modest living room, the same one with a framed quote above my couch. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. I'd always believed that. Now, I was about to find out what it really meant. The first call came from my cousin Rachel. Hey, Amanda? She said, way too bright. Listen, I was just talking to Uncle Mark and, your name came up. There was a pause, a breath, and then the drop. They're saying you turned in Michael. Is that true? I didn't lie. I didn't explain. I just said, yes. Rachel went quiet. Then, the sound of her breath catching. You really did it? I didn't do anything, Rachel. He broke the law. I reported what I knew. Oh my God, she whispered. Do you even realize what you've done to this family? Click. That was the beginning. The next few days were a blur of calls, texts, sideways glances at the grocery store. At school, my colleagues asked careful questions. Rough week, huh? Or, saw something about your brother in the paper. Their sympathy thinned the moment they realized I was the one who had spoken up. At first, I told myself it would pass. But then Sunday came. Family brunch. That's when everything cracked open. I wasn't going to attend. My parents hadn't spoken to me since the footage was linked back. But Aunt Margaret texted me directly. Just come. We need to talk. So I went, because a small part of me still hoped they'd understand. The house was packed. Every folding chair out of the basement. Every casserole dish steaming. It smelled like my childhood. Warm cinnamon rolls, strong coffee, too much perfume. But the air felt colder than ever. I stepped inside and the room hushed. Michael wasn't there, but nearly everyone else was. Uncles, aunts, cousins I hadn't seen in years. All eyes on me. My mother sat stiffly on the love seat, lips pressed into a line. My father stood beside her, arms folded. It was Uncle Mark who spoke first. We thought you were better than this. I looked around, scanning for even one familiar softness. There was none. Better than what? I asked, voice quiet. Than betraying your own blood, Aunt Teresa snapped. Michael made a mistake, a terrible one, I said slowly. But hiding it won't undo it. It only protects him at someone else's expense. Uncle Jim scoffed. Nobody died, and now you've dragged our whole family through the mud. The papers, the internet, people calling us criminals. I didn't make him leave the scene, I said. He did that all on his own. Don't act like you're some hero, my cousin Tyler chimed in. You could have just talked to him, handled it privately. I did, I said sharply, and I was told to stay silent, for the sake of the family. So what? You decided to become the town's martyr? Aunt Teresa's voice was venom now. You threw your own brother under the bus just to feel righteous? I looked at my mother, still silent. "Mom?" I asked. Her hands were clasped tight. She didn't look up. "I begged you," she whispered. "I begged you not to do this." The words stung more than I expected. "You always thought you were above us," Dad added, his voice low but firm. "College girl, teacher, miss, do the right thing. Well, now you've ruined his life. And for what?" I blinked hard, willing my face to stay neutral. "For the truth," I said. It landed like a slap. No one moved. No one spoke. Then my aunt pointed a finger at me. "Withdraw the statement," she said. "Call the sheriff. Say it was a mistake, that it wasn't him." "No," I replied instantly. "You'll be cut off," Uncle Mark warned. "From all of us." I met their eyes, one by one, then cut me off. I turned before they could see the tears threaten. My heels clicked sharply across the hardwood floor. At the door, my cousin Rachel called after me. "One last jab. You're going to regret this." Maybe. But I didn't stop. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt free. I didn't know her name at first. The woman whose yard Michael tore through in the dead of night. All I knew was what the article said. Elderly widow, beloved in the community, garden enthusiast. I'd passed that house 100 times without noticing. One white fence in a town full of them. But now she had a name. Clara Henderson. She appeared on the local news just 4 days after the sheriff's department confirmed they had a suspect due to a citizen-submitted video. I didn't watch the segment live. I heard about it in whispers at school, saw snippets on Facebook before I could scroll away fast enough. But eventually, curiosity broke me down. I sat on my couch that evening, laptop open, bracing myself. The video opened on a cozy living room. Clara sat with a knitted shawl over her shoulders, a soft-spoken reporter beside her. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a photo of her late husband, framed in a cheap brass frame. The garden, she said, had been his pride. After he passed, tending it became her lifeline. And now it's all gone, the reporter murmured gently. Clara smiled faintly. "Flowers can be replanted." Then the reporter asked what I'd dreaded and hoped for. "What would you say to the person who came forward?" Clara blinked slowly. Then she looked straight into the camera. "I would say thank you." There was no hesitation. "I know it couldn't have been easy. I don't know who you are. But I know you did what was right when it would have been easier to look away. And if the world had more people like that, maybe fewer gardens would be ruined in the first place." The camera lingered on her face. She wasn't angry. She was grateful. I sat there, hands over my mouth, breathing hard through my fingers. Within hours, the clip went viral in our county. Not nationally, not even statewide, but enough. Enough for people in our town to start seeing the story differently. Enough for strangers to stop me at the grocery store, not with scowls, but with soft nods. "I saw the clip," a woman whispered in the bread aisle, her toddler clinging to her jeans. "Took guts." "Not everyone could do what you did," said Mr. Jensen, the town pharmacist. "Proud of you. It didn't matter that I never confirmed anything." Clara's thank you had said enough. Everyone knew. And suddenly, I wasn't just the girl who betrayed her family. I was the woman who spoke up. But that kind of spotlight is a funny thing. It doesn't warm you, it scorches. I tried to return to normal. Lesson plans, coffee, calling out kids for late homework, but nothing felt normal anymore. The principal summoned me for a quote-quote friendly chat about quote-quote community impact. The school board met behind closed doors. Whispers followed me in the teacher's lounge like smoke trails. Still, Clara's words replayed in my head each night as I lay awake. You did what was right. It wasn't applause. It wasn't fame. It was something deeper. Validation from the one person who had every right to hate me and didn't. That mattered. More than my family's cold shoulders. More than my students' rumors. More than my job, even if I was about to lose it. The official reason on the letter said disruption to the learning environment. But everyone knew what it really meant. I'd become a problem. It started subtly. Less eye contact in staff meetings. Parents who used to smile at drop-off now avoided me. One even emailed the school board, concerned that personal issues were clouding my judgment in the classroom. Then the principal called me in. "Just a conversation," he said, gesturing toward the visitor chair. I sat. I waited. He cleared his throat. "You've been under some pressure lately." I didn't answer. "We've had complaints. Not about your teaching, per se. More about optics." Optics. The word lodged like a splinter. "You mean because I told the truth?" He raised his hands. "Look, Amanda, you've been an asset here, but with everything going on, it's become a distraction. To the students, to the faculty, and frankly, to the community." I could feel the blood rising in my ears. "Are you firing me?" He didn't blink. "We're asking you to step away. With pay through the end of the semester, it'll give everyone time to recalibrate." I stood, slowly, numb. "You mean time to forget I ever worked here?" He didn't deny it. I walked out of that office with a cardboard box and a hollow ache. The halls I used to know so well now felt like a movie set. Fake, distant, silent. The final humiliation came 2 days later. My landlord, Mrs. Denning, a woman I'd known since I was 12, called unexpectedly. "I'm really sorry, Amanda," she said, "but my daughter's moving back into town with her kids. I need the unit." She didn't need it, not really. Her daughter lived 3 states away. I'd just seen her post-vacation pictures from Arizona. "But I've never missed rent," I said quietly. "I know. This isn't about that. It's just family." That word again. Family. It was always someone else's shield, never mine. So I packed. I didn't have much. Books. A few dishes. A framed photo of me and Michael before life got messy. I almost left it behind. Almost. I moved into a budget motel off Highway 63. The kind with floral bedspreads and humming fluorescent lights. It smelled like mildew and burned toast. But no one looked at me there. No one cared who I was or what I'd done. That was the hardest part. It wasn't the job. Or the apartment. It was the erasure. People I'd grown up with now crossed the street to avoid me. Friends unfollowed me without a word. The local diner stopped calling my name when my coffee was ready. They just left it on the counter in silence. I wasn't Amanda the teacher anymore. I was Amanda the traitor. Amanda the whistleblower. Amanda the girl who brought shame to her own family. I didn't cry. Not then. Not when I stuffed lesson plans into plastic bins. Not when I handed over my keys. But that night, in the motel bathroom, sitting on a chipped tile floor with a towel pulled around my shoulders, I let go. Because no one tells you that doing the right thing can break you, that justice has a cost, and sometimes the receipt comes late. It was an email, tucked between spam offers and overdue bills. Subject line, "Your voice matters." I nearly deleted it, but something in the sender's name made me pause. Justice Bloom's Foundation. The name rang a bell. A nonprofit I'd seen once featured on public access, helping survivors and community advocates speak out. They helped small voices become heard, especially in towns like mine, where silence was tradition and truth had a curfew. The message was brief. "Dear Amanda, we recently became aware of your courage in speaking out regarding a local incident involving a hit and run. Our hearts go out to you, not only for your integrity but for the cost you've paid. We'd be honored to speak with you about sharing your story at upcoming community panels on civic responsibility and the emotional toll of whistleblowing. All travel and lodging would be covered. Please let us know if you'd be open to talking. Warmly, Tasha Lynn, Outreach Director, Justice Bloom's Foundation." I reread it 3 times, unsure if it was real. Someone had seen me. Not just the scandal, not just the fallout. Me, I replied. Tasha called the next morning. Her voice was warm, not pitying. Firm, not forceful. "We don't want to exploit you," she said. "We want to honor what you did. That kind of courage isn't common." I nearly cried right there in the motel lobby. She asked if I'd be comfortable speaking at a regional forum in Madison, a gathering of educators, legal advocates, and victims' families. Not formal, no pressure, just a roundtable and some shared stories. "I'm not a speaker," I told her. "You don't have to be," she said. "You just have to be real," which you already are. That weekend, they paid for my train ticket and booked me into a clean, quiet hotel. For the first time in weeks, I slept on a bed that didn't creak or hum or smell like mildew. The event was held in a modest university hall, 50 people in folding chairs, a podium, coffee in paper cups, nothing fancy. But when I stepped to the microphone and looked into those faces, strangers, all of them, I didn't feel fear. I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Belonging. I told them everything. Not the legal details, but the human ones. The dread, the betrayal, the night in the garage. The moment I realized my family loved silence more than justice. And the woman, Clara, who reminded me why I did it in the first place. When I finished, no one clapped right away. They just sat there, some with tears in their eyes, some nodding. And then, slowly, softly, the applause began. Afterward, Tasha approached me with a folder. "Just something to think about," she said. Inside was a packet. Relocation assistance, therapy resources, teaching job leads in other counties, places that valued ethics as much as experience. "You don't have to stay in a town that punishes integrity," she said gently. "There's a world that will see you for who you are." For the first time, I allowed myself to believe it, that maybe I wasn't ruined. Maybe I was reborn. I hadn't heard my father's voice in over 3 months. Not since the brunch. Not since they told me to choose between family and truth. And I chose truth. So when his name lit up on my phone, my stomach flipped. I stared at the screen, watching the name pulse like a warning. I almost let it ring out. But something fragile and old, made me answer. "Dad?" There was silence. Just a soft breath. And then his voice, raspy and low. "Amanda, it's your mother." The words fell like bricks into my chest. "She collapsed at the market this morning," he said, barely keeping it together. "Ambulance took her to St. Clair's. They think it's her heart. She's stable for now, but..." His voice cracked. "They don't know for how long." The motel room blurred. I sat down on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, as if trying to catch up to everything he hadn't said before. "I know we ended things wrong. I should have called sooner. But your mother's asking for you." He paused, then added, "And Michael, he's not well." "Of course he's not. He's been drinking. A lot. He barely leaves the basement. He won't talk to anyone, not even her." I pressed my palm to my forehead. The weight of it all was too much, too fast. "I'm not calling to beg," he continued. "Just come see her, please." I didn't answer right away, because underneath the plea, I could still hear the echoes of their last words to me. Traitor, shame, cut off. And now, what? I was their daughter again? Their saving grace? I stared out the motel window at the bare trees whipping in the wind. I'd come so far. I'd rebuilt parts of myself I didn't know existed. And yet the thought of Mom in a hospital bed, fragile and afraid, it pierced me. "How bad is it?" I asked finally. "She's hooked to machines. They say she needs more tests. But..." "She's scared, Mandy?" That name. Mandy. The one only my family ever used. I closed my eyes. "I'll come," I said. "But I'm not staying." He exhaled, half relief, half apology. "Thank you." I packed lightly. A single bag. The memoir draft I'd started sat on the desk, untouched. I slipped it inside. Not for them, just for me. A reminder that I was still building something of my own. The hospital was only a 2-hour drive, but it felt like another lifetime away. When I arrived, the halls smelled of antiseptic and uncertainty. She was pale, smaller than I remembered. Tubes in her arms, wires trailing from beneath her gown. But when she saw me, her lips lifted faintly. "Amanda," she whispered. I sat beside her bed, gripping her hand, feeling how fragile she'd become. Her eyes welled, but she didn't speak about what had passed between us. She didn't have to. Sometimes pain makes words unnecessary. We sat there in quiet forgiveness, until my father reappeared in the doorway. "He's worse today," he said, eyes darting toward the floor. "Michael." He didn't need to explain. I could already see it. My brother, guilt-ridden and spiraling, drowning the truth in liquor while the world moved on. "I don't know what to do with him," Dad muttered. "He won't listen to me." I nodded slowly, the ache in my chest returning. It wasn't pity I felt for Michael, it was grief. For who he'd been, for who he might have become, and maybe for who he still could be, if someone finally stopped enabling the lie. I should have trusted the hesitation in Dad's voice, the way he kept saying, "Just come talk," instead of, "We need you." The nervous glances in the hospital hallway, the way he didn't look me in the eye when I left Mom's side to check on Michael. They were setting the table, but not for dinner. When I arrived at the house, the lights were all on. Too many, the curtains drawn. Inside, the smell of coffee mixed with something tighter, staler, like unease. Michael wasn't on the couch where he usually slumped. No empty bottles in sight. The room had been scrubbed of its usual chaos. I walked into the living room, and there they were, all of them. Dad, Aunt Teresa, Uncle Mark, my cousin Rachel, even Pastor Caleb from Mom's church, and in the center, seated upright and unnaturally alert, Michael. He looked thinner, eyes bloodshot, jaw tight, a bottle-shaped outline in his sweatshirt pocket. "Sit?" Dad said. I didn't move. "What is this?" Michael stood, stepping toward me. "We need to talk." His voice was softer than I remembered. It almost worked, until Aunt Teresa said it. "We're doing this for the family." There it was again, the invocation, the weapon. "This isn't a conversation," I said slowly. "It's an ambush. It's an intervention," Pastor Caleb corrected. "Of the heart." I nearly laughed. Dad cleared his throat. "Amanda, we're asking you, one last time, to consider withdrawing your statement." "There is no statement," I snapped. "I sent footage anonymously. That's not a sworn deposition." "But everyone knows it was you," Rachel chimed in. "And if you tell the sheriff it was a mistake..." "It wasn't a mistake," I said louder now. "What he did wasn't a mistake. Leaving the scene wasn't a mistake. Lying afterward wasn't a mistake." "Enough," Uncle Mark barked. "You've made your point, and you've made yours," I replied. "You care more about reputation than repair." Michael sank back onto the couch, face buried in his hands. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "I didn't ask for this." But he didn't stop it either. I turned to my father. "You brought me here under false pretenses. You used Mom's illness to bait me." His jaw clenched. "She's not bait." "No," I said, voice trembling. "But this is a trap." There was silence, cold and stiff. Then Aunt Teresa spoke again. "Amanda, this is your family. Do you really want to keep tearing it apart?" I stared at her. At all of them. And then I did something no one expected. I sat down. I opened my bag and pulled out a folder. "What is that?" Dad asked. "This," I said, "is a plan. For Michael. An actual one." I slid it onto the coffee table. Rehab programs, contact info, financial aid applications. I'd spent 2 weeks researching it after leaving the nonprofit forum, just in case. "I will pay for the first 6 months. I will help him get real support, but there's a condition." They all stared, blinking. "You want something?" Rachel said incredulously. "I want the truth," I said calmly. "Publicly. I want you, all of you, to admit what happened. That you knew. That you asked me to lie. That you protected him while blaming me." "Impossible," Dad said. "Then so is my help." Michael looked up then. Really looked. His voice broke as he whispered. "You'd still help me?" I nodded. "If you face it. Not deny it, not bury it. Face it." They didn't speak. No one moved. The silence wasn't rejection. It was calculation. But the seed was planted. And I didn't need their applause. I'd brought my terms to the table. And for the first time in this house, the truth didn't sit alone. They didn't agree right away. No one in my family ever did anything quickly, unless it was protecting an image. But something about the folder, the calm in my voice, the weariness behind my eyes, made them sit with it. A week passed. I returned to my motel, waited, tried not to replay every tense word around that living room coffee table. Then came the call. "Michael, I'll do it," he said. No preamble. "I'll do the program." I closed my eyes. "And the rest?" I asked. There was a pause. "They're drafting a statement. For the sheriff. For the paper. For Clara." I didn't ask who they meant. I didn't care, so long as it happened. The truth, once buried so carefully, was finally clawing into daylight. The next week, I accompanied Michael to his intake appointment at a long-term rehab center, 2 counties over. Not hidden in the woods. Not glamorous. Just clean, intentional, and painfully honest. It was the first time in months he looked me in the eyes. "I don't deserve this," he said quietly as we walked in. "I'm not doing it because you deserve it. I replied. I'm doing it because someone has to end the cycle. The paperwork was endless. Financial forms, therapy intake, drug screenings. His court liaison was a surprisingly empathetic woman named Layla, who shook my hand and said, "Most families don't come through like this." I almost laughed. She had no idea. In the weeks that followed, I stayed involved, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to see it through. I met with the county prosecutor, helped draft a legal appeal outlining Michael's willingness to take responsibility, his entrance into treatment, and his family's previous obstruction. The words stung to type. Family members knowingly suppressed evidence, but it was necessary. The DA didn't drop the charges, but he agreed to amend the sentence, allowing for probation and mandatory rehab in lieu of jail time. Michael cried when he heard, not from relief, from guilt. And that's when I knew. Maybe he wasn't who he used to be. Maybe none of us were. The day my parents issued their statement, it wasn't elegant. It didn't drip with regret, but it was enough. They admitted they knew. They admitted they pressured me. They named me, not as a villain, but as a catalyst. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed. But I didn't move back. I declined when Mom asked. Even when Dad said, "Things are different now," because they weren't. Not really. They were just exposed. I'd rented a small one-bedroom near the nonprofit's regional office, just as Bloom's had offered me a part-time outreach position, traveling to speak, mentoring others who were where I'd once stood. And in the quiet evenings, I wrote. The memoir came slowly, painfully. Title: The Price of Truth. It wasn't a book about blame. It was a book about aftermath. Because that's what they never tell you about doing the right thing. The cost isn't always paid up front. Sometimes it arrives in waves. Family, reputation, home. But sometimes, if you stand long enough, speak loud enough, and love deep enough to hold people accountable, healing finds its way in. Not fast, but real. They say your life doesn't change all at once. It unravels and then reshapes. I used to think that meant loss, that transformation only came after everything fell apart. But now I understand. Sometimes it comes after you build something new with what remains. The Price of Truth hit shelves quietly. Just a modest run, mostly in libraries and niche stores. But it spread. Word of mouth, book clubs, college ethics classes. Suddenly, I was no longer Amanda the whistleblower. I was Amanda the author, the speaker, the woman who'd stared down silence and decided to speak anyway. It didn't make everything perfect. My name still made people uncomfortable in Hayward. Some bridges never rebuilt. Some people never called. But others did. Letters came in, handwritten, trembling cursive on lined paper. Emails from teenagers who saw themselves in my story. From women who stayed quiet too long. From men who admitted they'd once told someone to keep it in the family. It wasn't applause I chased. It was resonance. And now, it found me. Michael finished his rehab program. He didn't ask for a parade, he just sent me a postcard. 1 year, sober today. I remember that garden, I'll never forget it. Thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. I kept that card on my fridge. Mom called once a week now. She never pressured, never guilted. Just asked about my writing, my travels, how I was eating. The things mothers ask when they're trying, in their own way, to start over. Dad didn't call much, but at Christmas, he sent a box. Inside was a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, the same edition I used to teach from. Inside the front cover, he wrote, "You were right. Doing what's right isn't always popular, but it's still right." I sat with that book on my lap for an hour, unable to read the first page. Because in the end, this story wasn't just about a hit and run. It was about every quiet choice we make when no one's clapping. About the cost of courage when no one calls it brave yet. It was about the garden. The one Clara rebuilt. She invited me to see it that spring. I hadn't expected the invitation, but I went. And when I arrived, there she was, kneeling beside a row of fresh lilies, her hands in the dirt, the sun warming the back of her neck. "I almost didn't replant," she told me. But then I remembered. Some things grow better the second time. We stood in silence together, breathing the air. I left a small stone at the edge of her walkway, painted white, with one word, truth. Because that's what this was all for. Not justice in the courtroom, not applause in the town square, just truth. Planted deep, watered in tears, growing quietly beneath the sun. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from the ashes of honesty? Would you do it again, even if it meant losing everything first? Amanda did, and her garden, like Clara's, is still blooming. If her story moved you, share it, and let us know in the comments, what price have you paid for telling the truth?